Animals, the land, and humans share a long history in Corsica. A harsh history made up of work and poverty, surviving with little, where people move like nomads between plains and mountains. This history is one of a rural civilization which permeated all of Corsica and became its cornerstone. A history where the shepherd is the central character, the person identified with the island. The agro-pastoral civilization set its ancient mark on all the regions, leaving the remains of a world whose stones were patiently laid by human hands, even on the slopes of Monte Cinto. For centuries, the Corsican valleys resounded to the great movements of transhumance, creating an essential social link between communities. This ancient model is no longer the reality in Corsica. The seasonal migrations aren't on the same scale as before, and over 80% of the shepherds' huts have been abandoned. George Grisanti is a shepherd who is continuing the profession. Every summer for 20 years, he has climbed up to the San Bartoli shepherd's hut in Castagniccia with his wife, Mary Jean, to make goat's cheese.
They have Corsican names. For example, this one is white with black eyes. She's called Uachada. This one is Goya Bianca. There's Spanetta, Morsha da Rosa, Merlada, Irrigated, Cinta, Colomba, Bianca, Riga.
George's flock contains over 100 Corsican goats. This perfectly hardy animal can live on the toughest and poorest terrains of the Maquis and the mountains. Part of the island's history, it has given its milk to the islanders for over 6,000 years.
This breed is unique to Corsica. It's the only one we've ever had here. In general, in this region, in Corsica. At this time of year, all the flocks are dried up. Everyone dries them up at the end of July. Well, during July. And as we're in the summer pasture, we can get a bit more. And the season this year, it's rained, so it's very green. So we can carry on getting just a bit more milk. The best time for me is the summer, when we're up on the mountain. That's the best season. I think we spend the other 10 months looking forward to the summer on the mountain. This is a special cheese. On the mountain, cheese matures more, well, my cheese matures more quickly. This is a cheese which isn't even a month old and it's ready for eating already. It's got an exceptional taste that you don't get down below. The taste you can only get from the summer pasture. Down below, you can't get this cheese. Look at it. Nice and smooth, a good color. The goats eat the plants in the marquee. I don't know of any they don't eat. There's strawberry tree. Everything. That's why it's a great cheese. This is 100% marquee from the summer pasture.
The building at San Bartoli isn't like most others. It was originally a church.
There are a lot of churches like this in Corsica, on ridges. They were built by warrior monks. As you can see the sea and the mountain, they could send signals. They had an area for fires over there on the ridge, which communicated with two other churches on ridges, and they sent signals. It was the telephone of yesteryear. The shepherd's hut was a bit like the presbytery, where the monks lived. And then gradually shepherds came and occupied it. There were other shepherds' huts further away, but this was just the church, and the shepherds lived in it later. My brother and I rebuilt it, because there was almost nothing left of it. The walls were only a meter high. Since we rebuilt it, we come up here every year.
In summer, most shepherds' huts are also inns that welcome tourists and islanders looking for authentic products. 2 hours' walk from the nearest village, San Bartoli is famous for its broccio donuts and its high-quality goat's cheese. Most shepherds sell their summer produce this way, thanks to this green tourism that allows pastoralism to continue in these mountainous areas. The summer grazing stretches from the north to the south of the island, all along the mountain ridge, over 150 kilometers. And nowhere else in France is it traditional for pigs to also go up to the summer pasture.
We're just coming to the Cascioni Plateau. The plateau is just up there, behind those hills. The Cascioni Plateau is 8,000 hectares, and at the beginning of the century there were 300 shepherds here. There are far fewer now. A lot of people come up with sheep, cows, and pigs for summer pasture. This is the Taravo Valley. So everyone from the valley used to come up to the plateau. They brought their pigs here, partly to rest the land in the village, and also to purge the pigs by eating roots and that kind of thing. And that gives flavor to the meat, and it develops the muscle. And they also had to feed them less than usual.
This is the animal that's typical of this island, the famous mountain-bred pig, whose meat is used for authentic Corsican charcuterie. The animal is so precious that the men prepare a fire for its first night on the mountain. Later, the pigs will come and warm themselves beside the hot ashes. This is the way Jean-Félix Giorgi does it, a pig breeder from the high Taravo. He has always worked this way, as did his ancestors.
Don't worry, they won't come down again now. In October, when it starts to get cold and freeze, because the grass on the plain down below is mature, but not up here. So it rises and rises. And when the grass starts to dry out here and to freeze in October, you'll see that they start to come down again. It's the usual cycle.
In the spring, this is the summer pasture. That gives you a particular quality because we'll have pigs of 15 to 18 months old. It's like nothing else. You sell them mature, good, and red. You can tell from the taste.
Oh, non abbiamo mica tutto, ah. Giusto parecchi così.
The pigs bred by Jean-Félix are fed only on acorns and chestnuts, and they're slaughtered at a minimum of 14 months. The meat he produces is unique, rich and tasty, and gives a variety of products.
This is a saucisson, slightly smoked. This is a mixed saucisson. It's what was left over, really. Saucisson, figatello, and sausage. This is a fiton. It's figatello with a very high offal content, so it keeps in the summer. There's no fat in it, so it won't go off. We keep it till summer and eat it dry. And this is a pork shoulder, the coppa.
People don't know what tastes good anymore. They haven't grown up in this tradition. How can they appreciate a product like this? If you give them a slice of coppa, they take off the fat, but the fat gives it flavor. And then the saucisson, I'm not saying this just to talk about Jean-Félix, but just look at these products. I work on the GR, and I see some of the products there. The coppa is as brown as that board. I tell people not to eat it. Pay for a good product, but don't eat certain others. You'll poison yourself. A good saucisson is a marriage of good pig, knowledge, and then good maturing in a good cellar. Those are the three criteria.
Among forests of beech, ash, oak, and chestnut trees, Jean-Félix pigs spend the summer on the biggest high plateau in Corsica, the Corsican Plateau, 7,000 hectares of a vast meadow which has always been used for summer grazing.
Je m'offre le luxe de travailler I have the luxury of working in this setting, with all the elements, being close to the sea, a beautiful view of the mountain, the sun, the wind. You have birds flying over, the noise, animals that come and see you. Cows make a very good audience. These are hunter's cartridges that I find out walking. It's a bit like flower, 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 rifle. It shows there are lots of places that are still wild, where animals can reproduce quietly. They have food to eat. It's a rich country. They are signs too, not just of violence, but also of all that.
Letitia Carlotti, a Corsican artist, makes installations in situ and finds on her many walks her materials that she recycles. This target is made up of about 20,000 cartridge cases in the different colors of the spectrum. A green gesture, a proposal for a rural economy in transition. This Corsican artist spends her time discovering her island, meeting the men and women who make up the rural world.
I collect the materials for my work. I'm getting to know the area I'm living in. I have a friend who's a shepherd and I've learned to milk. I'm starting to learn and understand how to make cheese. I want to learn to tan skins. I'll never have enough of a life to exploit all the riches that are offered to me in this territory. It's a bit discouraging. And I like it here. It means I can live in different places and extend my exploration of the Corsican territory and really make it my island.
We're in autumn now. The goats have had their kids, and the weather has changed too. It's raining every day and it's tough. This rainy weather usually lasts until December. It's a nuisance for the goats especially, because they don't like the wet.
George Grisanti works with his son Laurent, who will soon take over the family farm.
In Corsica, it's traditional to eat kid at Christmas. That's why the goats give birth now. That way we have our kids for Christmas, and we're sure to sell them.
Every kid belongs to a goat. Of course, there's always one. You don't know who it belongs to. You go through all the goats who have had kids, and then you find her. There's one who's still waiting.
Alors là, c'est la bonne. A quale? Ce n'è più. No. Qui è. Paolino! Paolino!
Since I was 2.5, I've been around goats, and I know what I want to do. My grandmother tried to dissuade me, but it didn't work. You know what to expect. You know the work that's involved. You know that sometimes the weather can cause difficulties. Some years are better than others.
Choosing to work and live in their region is the aspiration for many Corsicans. It's more than a life choice. It's a commitment to keeping their village and region alive, so this island doesn't become just a beautiful museum.
Corsica isn't just about sun. It's also about winter, snow, and then it's deserted. In the country, you're on your own. It's hard. But when I'm in my workshop, I'm happy. I work with my raw material to make it come to maturity and have the best possible taste.
In the depths of winter, the men slaughtered the pigs and make charcuterie.
They mustn't touch. You have to separate them so they're not touching.
The famous Corsican charcuterie only represents 10% of the total amount of charcuterie produced on the island. Generally, at the start of summer, the only charcuterie remaining for sale is made from the carcasses of animals from industrial farms on the mainland, and stamped as Corsican charcuterie because it's processed on the island. After finally gaining the AOC label, breeders like Jean-Félix Georgi are also campaigning for a red label for pigs bred locally, but from different breeds.
We take the time to dry these products and to let them mature. It's a different taste. The raw material is different too, so everything is different. And that's what can really be called Corsican charcuterie.
In winter, the road to Restonica is never without snow. So at this time of year, you need a good reason to try to get to the upper part of the Restonica, Corsica's best-known river. The Restonica's source is Lake Mello at an altitude of 1,700 meters. It's noted for the endemism contained in its waters, which are regularly analyzed by hydrobiologists from the university in Corte.
This is a totally endemic species. It's a Baetis cineus.
Antoine Orsini and Christophe Maury are taking samples of the microorganisms in this river, such as insect larvae.
Corsica is a paradise for hydrobiologists because there's a high level of Corsican endemism. And we also have a lot of species that are endemic to Corsica and Sardinia. So the two islands have a common geological past.
Today in these samples that we've taken, we have 100% endemic species. We have Hydropsyche cernatica, we have Beta cerneus. You can tell with names like that these species aren't found anywhere else. What else have we got? Ecdionorus corsicus. So you see why it's special. People often ask us, why do you study these insects? Why do you study these little larvae? Well, we study them in order to explain how the ecosystem works. But we also do applied studies because we identify species that are indicators of the quality of the environment. For example, we have an endemic species which we used to find down in Corte. Corte is at an altitude of 400 meters. Today it's only found at 800 meters. So gradually its place in the environment is being reduced, and the creature has to seek out cool water at altitude. That's a problem. And we see the impact of climate change from these things.
Snow brings the hope of water. And water is one of the riches of Corsica. It has allowed the rural world to develop and people to live in the mountain areas. Over time, the power of water has carved out many gorges and a whole series of steep-sided valleys. The Liamone, the Rizzanese, the Gravone, the Taravo, the Golo, the Tavignano, the Restonica all flow here, 24 rivers covering over half the island. These are springs, waterfalls, and at the foot of the peaks, former glacial lakes covered in aquatic vegetation. These waterholes are posines, a curiosity several thousands of years old. And the pearl of the Corsican mountains is Lake Ninu, the second largest lake in Corsica, the source of the Tavignano and the largest posines on the island. This is the pastoral region of Niolu, where cattle, horses, and sheep spend the summer. Corsica also draws its water from the sky. The often strong east and southeast winds push moist air towards the high ground, where it condenses to give violent precipitation. Over a few decades, rivers have become a place for sport, often extreme sport, a good way to travel through wild and protected valleys.
people come, they're not disappointed because it's not really like the rivers on the mainland. You can see it's very narrow, very small. It takes a lot of maneuvering, whereas the rivers on the mainland are wider. There are some rivers like this, but not so many of them in one area, which is... Corsica isn't very big.
Corsica isn't big, and not many of the islanders travel on the rivers like this. Bruno, Jeremy, and Laurent have formed their own organization to practice this water sport and to show others the diversity of Corsican rivers.
I think there are at least 50 rivers to paddle on in Corsica. I live here and I've been kayaking for 7 years. I must have done not even a third of them, so there's still plenty of work to do. There's plenty of work, both to kayak successfully and to find people to do it, because that's not easy. I've done the Taravo twice. It's a beautiful river with a lot of bedrock. The color of the water is spectacular, turquoise blue. And then there are the rapids, the 3 falls that everyone knows. Everyone wants to do them once in their kayaking life. It's not hard in itself. It's just 3 big falls with enormous pools. For every rapid, you get there and you plan your route down. And then there's a rock you couldn't see, so you suddenly have to set aside that route and find another one quickly. It's called survival. You paddle as best you can, and generally you get through. Or you don't get through, and then you swim. As long as you're not injured or badly hurt, it's still a fun sport. For years, people thought the rivers in Corsica were really hard. You had to have a very high level. You'd break your equipment. It was very physical. But we're trying to show that Corsica isn't only about tough rivers with big falls. You can also find quieter rivers, where people who are in clubs on the mainland can come and paddle to enjoy themselves. Because the aim of this sport is to enjoy yourself.
In the summer, when the water is warmer, the rivers are a paradise. The Restonica Valley, classified as a Grand Site National, is the most visited river in all of Corsica. With over 2,000 kilometers of watercourses, every Corsican has their own secret place and river to get away from it all. Like Gulami Ferreri, a mountain guide, who goes trout fishing in order to be alone in a totally wild place, because it's inaccessible.
You have to be careful because there are some tricky places where you have to climb. You have to climb along the waterfalls, or else you have to make big detours to avoid these very steep-sided areas. These places have names: Moulila, Larges, the Gouji, all these places that define your fishing trip. So if I say I went to the Gouji, a person who's from around here will know exactly where I went to fish, where I caught some trout. In some places there are, I don't know, maybe 50 or 60.
Gulami fishes for macrostigma trout, a trout whose origins are endemic to Corsica. It's very wary, so you must approach from downriver, so you're not seen, and fish upriver.
It's annoying because it's bleeding. And when it bleeds, I'm gonna have to keep this one. When it bleeds, it's dead. It's hemophiliac. It won't stop bleeding. I started fishing in small streams near my house when I was 7 or 8. I started going up into the mountains without really telling my parents. I told them I wasn't going far, and actually I was 2 hours walk away from the village, up in the mountains, when I was 14 or 15, and fishing up there.
If trout fishing is a hobby now, for a long time it was an essential supplement to the food supply. These few trout are now more of an excuse for Gulami to walk along the river, whose means of access are known only to him, like a secret he promises to always keep.
I think in total on this mountain there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 or 8 flocks on the whole of this area of summer pasture in Restonica. About that.
A few shepherds and country people still live here, continuing their activity in spite of the difficulties. They watch Corsica changing, and they fear they'll disappear, with the last shepherds remaining as a cliché in the imagination of tourists looking for authenticity. Gerard, a history teacher from Bastia, comes up to the shepherd's hut at Abouli every summer.
I don't see nature without people. Corsica is just a landscape. Corsica land wouldn't interest me at all. Without people, without knowing that, I mean, it's beautiful, but who cares if it's beautiful without being beautiful for other people too? It's stupid, but I think that some of my ancestors who were here, who did this crazy work, who lived a bit like animals with their animals. You know, in a shelter where they crawled into sleep. They ate potatoes, they looked after the animals. It was slave labor. And it's true that land without people is of no interest, even if people change.
What does the future hold? Everyone in Corsica wonders what will become of these spaces where humans have always lived and worked. The interior of Corsica is the identity of the island. It gives meaning to the territories and contains huge potential for the future. In spite of everything, these rural areas are becoming depopulated and are at risk of turning into an oasis of nature for city dwellers who will see these landscapes only as a world without humans.